Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel implied Friday that her party cannot afford for the House Speaker race to last too long. I don't think our country can afford that to take too long, and I think it's bad for our party, McDaniel said on Fox News. I also hope they get rid of this motion to vacate. We cannot have another chaotic turnover of Speaker before next year's election. I think it's not going to impact our results. Excuse me. Her comments follow a chaotic few weeks in the House featuring fights over government spending as a possible government shutdown loomed and former Speaker Kevin McCarthy being ousted from his leadership role Tuesday. McDaniel added that she thinks the two most prominent contenders for the speakership, Representative Jim Jordan and House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, are both up to the task. They'll do a great job, McDaniel said, but the longer this takes, the worse it is for us. So I hope they do it privately. Let's not have leaks. Let's make sure we come out united, she added. McDaniel previously spoke about GOP infighting within the lower chamber earlier this week. She said she doesn't know how it will help the party defeat President Biden in 2024. I think every Republican right now has to wake up every day and say, how does this help us beat the Democrats in November? What headline do we need today? She said Wednesday on Fox Business. Anytime we're fighting with each other, we're taking away from our message against Joe Biden, she later added. We're about a year out from a critical election where we have a great Senate map. We've got to hold the House and we can win the White House. McDaniel added that the headlines being about Republicans fighting and not Biden's policies is not good. The headlines today aren't about the border. They're not about the failure of Bidenomics. They're not about fentanyl. It's about Republican Party infighting. It is not good, she said. So McDaniel is someone who I think is going to go down in history as probably the worst RNC chair, at least in the modern era. I mean, let's remember, under her leadership, the Republicans lost the House in 2018, lost the White House in 2020, barely won the House in 2022, and still ended up not winning back the Senate, even though the map was all there for them to get it. This is not someone who I think knows how to win elections. I don't see her as a person who should be authoritative when it comes to you. We need to do this. We need to get your message has not worked. You have failed to preside over a single positive election cycle for your party. And even the one time you guys won something, it still was below expectations. But to get to what she's talking about, we cannot have another chaotic turnover of Speaker before next year's election. It's not going to impact the results. Well, the problem is you guys got rid of McCarthy, who, even if his positions I think are kind of nuts, he's still not considered as extreme as, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Bo Burt or some of the other members of the Republican conference. And there is something to say about the fact that these people, that members of his own party, voted with Democrats to get rid of him. That is something Biden and all the other Democrats, whether in Washington, can say, hey, you think we're dysfunctional? We're united behind our president. They can't even unite behind their own speaker. They're de facto leader, along with McConnell. And what's funny is where she says, anytime we're fighting with each other, we're taking away from our message against Joe Biden. Well, that's true, but what exactly is that message? I mean, besides the border, I don't really see Republicans talking about any specific issues. I'm hearing about the culture war. You actually still do have presidential candidates like DeSantis or Ramaswamy talking about woke. So I would say that there's a lot of, and now we're getting to a point where when you have the UAW strike going on, you had Tim Scott invoke Reagan firing government workers that were striking for higher wages, and you had Haley try to insult Biden as the most pro-union president. So a lot of their attacks aren't even working when they do focus on him. But really, the Republicans' biggest problem is not that the Democrats are these ironclad, amazing titans of policy. It's that in many cases, they're considered extremists. When they got rid of Roe v. Wade, for example, that had the opposite effect of what they had desired, because it's not popular to restrict people's right, women's right to choose, whatever. And ever since then, they've kind of been flailing around, sort of adopting any kind of position I mean, let's not forget the first Republican presidential debate, the candidates were booed for saying they don't support climate change, even though most of the politicians from that party have spent literal decades denying that such a thing exists. So it's a party that doesn't really have an identity outside of we support Trump, and that's pretty much it. And that's why I said if Trump came out tomorrow and said, I want single payer health care, which he actually did support at one point in his book, they would go out and say, yeah, let's have what the UK and Canada have. Yeah, sure. Because they have no ideology. It's all follow the leader. And I think the Republicans, if they this is going to happen next year. If they keep going the way they're going, Biden is not some amazingly strong candidate. A lot of people think he's old. A lot of people think he doesn't know where he is. But he's someone who has a really good marketing team around him. People that can make the case for him. I think if the Republicans do not play smart, they're going to end up losing the White House to him, and they can also possibly, if they get the Senate back, it's going to be really narrow, like maybe 1, 2, 3 seats. And there's a very good chance they lose the House as well. So the only thing they have a really good shot of getting next year is the Senate, and that still is debatable depending on how bad they perform. And McDaniel is a big part of the problem for that because she doesn't have a guiding philosophy. It's the same old rattled off, recycled talking points. The failure of Bidenomics. The border. Like, okay, we've heard this a million times, but there's a lot of people who are dealing with their own personal struggles, I happen to be among them, who couldn't give a hoot about the border because they're worried about themselves. They don't care about some migrant coming over here, or some immigrant entering illegally trying to flee from their own country, or any nebulous term you want to describe. Tell me why is Bidenomics bad, and why is McDaniel-onomics better? Like, explain what are the Republicans offering to where they are enticing to voters who don't normally support them? Because, yeah, they have a lot of red states down pat, but, I mean, they're even losing Georgia and Arizona. So, and I mean, hey, they can't run Abbott in Texas forever, so if he decides to retire, how long is that state going to stay red? All I'm getting at is they need some better messaging. McDaniel is not the person to do it. She hasn't presided over a single positive election cycle for her party outside of maybe the 2016 cycle, which still was like, no, because the ones afterward are the ones where she's been in charge the whole time, and it just hasn't gone well for her. And I really think they need somebody else. I think she got that job because she's Mitt Romney's niece. And, I mean, that's all the nepotism that we've already been familiar with. If your last name is whatever, you go very far in this country. But it's just sad that, they're not able to understand that your party despises itself. It doesn't know what it is. Even when it attacks Biden, it's not exactly sure of how to frame it in such a way as to make it more appealing to people. And this is why they're going to keep on barely being able to compete on a national level. The Democrats are not great, but the Republicans are pretty awful, even more so, arguably.